welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the ultimate cosmic hide-and-seek game, finding out what nothing actually looks like. It sounds like a super simple premise, right? I mean, we talk about nothing all the time. But the deeper we dig into the physics, the philosophy, and the literal reality of our universe, the more mind-bending this whole concept gets. So let's just dive right in.
Imagine you're trying to capture pure nothingness. You stare at a perfectly black screen on your phone, or you peer deep inside what looks like a totally empty cardboard box. You might think, finally, I'm looking at absolutely nothing. But actually, you aren't. You're really just looking at switched-off pixels or invisible matter hovering right there in the dark. And that right there illustrates our first massive scientific hurdle. Your so-called completely empty box? It's actually overflowing. It's filled right up to the absolute brim. You've got oxygen and nitrogen, tiny flakes of dead skin, pet hair floating around from your dog or cat, a little bit of argon, and just a pinch of carbon dioxide. So capturing a physical void is actually vastly more complicated than just emptying out a container.
Since our physical box totally failed the emptiness test, let's pivot. Let's ask our old, reliable friend Wikipedia how it defines this elusive state. It literally tells us that nothing is no thing. It's a complete absence of anything. The exact opposite of something, the absolute antithesis of everything. Basically, a pure, unadulterated state of non-existence.
Now here's where it gets weird. Trying to understand a true state of non-existence brings up a massive paradox when it comes to human thought. Think about things that clearly do not exist anywhere in physical reality, like, say, a physical vacuum made entirely out of pickles. Ridiculous, right? It obviously doesn't exist. But the very second you think about it, the idea of a vacuum made of pickles exists right inside your head. And fundamentally, an idea is something.
Which means, crazy enough, true nothingness can't even exist in your own thoughts. Try as hard as you might to think about absolutely nothing, and you're probably just going to end up picturing a dark black void. Well, that void is still a mental image. It's still something. And hey, even if you're naturally gifted at literally not thinking at all, your brain is still biologically functioning, firing off synapses. You just aren't actively aware of the thoughts you're having. All right, moving on to our first main section, searching the universe, looking outward. When you picture the void of deep space, you probably imagine the ultimate freezing emptiness. But you know what? Space is actually a bustling cosmic highway. Sure, it's a vacuum, but it's totally packed with trace elements, electromagnetic radiation shooting across the cosmos, cosmic rays, massive invisible magnetic fields, and honestly, a whole lot of space dust. It's incredibly vast for sure, but it is absolutely anything but empty. And what's really fascinating here is the sheer scale we have to deal with. You might wonder, well, what about the space the universe is expanding into? The absolute furthest edge we can see with today's best technology is a staggering 46 billion light-years away. To put that in perspective, that is mind-bogglingly far, but it still isn't far enough to see the actual edge of everything. Plus, logically, you can't have something expanding into a place where something has never been without there being something there to begin with. The prevailing scientific theory to explain this actually doesn't rely on an edge of empty nothingness at all. Instead, it suggests that our universe is embedded within a higher dimension that we just can't physically comprehend. Think of it kind of like a 2D animated character trapped inside a flat drawing on a piece of paper, completely unaware of the 3D room around it. If this theory holds true, whatever is out there beyond our universe is definitely not nothing. Next up, zooming into the atom, the quantum search. So we clearly can't zoom out far enough to find nothing. Let's trace our path downward instead. We start at the atom, right? The basic building block of matter. Zoom past the outer shell, straight into the nucleus. Inside there, we find protons and neutrons. And if we look even closer, zooming all the way down to the absolute smallest things we know of as humans, we find 3 tiny quarks tucked inside each of those protons and neutrons. Which brings up a really fantastic question. What's hovering in the microscopic gap between those tiny fundamental quarks? Surely you might think, in that infinitesimal little space, we've finally found our elusive true nothingness. Aha, gotcha. Nope, it's not nothing. It's actually gluons. Gluons act as the fundamental force holding those extremely tiny quarks together, meaning that even at the absolute smallest, most zoomed-in scale of physical reality we can currently measure, there isn't a single speck of nothingness to be found anywhere. It's just packed with microscopic glue. All right, let's shift gears to our next section, experiencing complete non-existence. If we can't find nothing in the vastness of deep space or hiding inside our tiny atoms, are we totally out of luck? Well, think back to before you were born. The fundamental elements that eventually formed your body might have been floating around the universe, but you didn't exist. You saw nothing, tasted nothing, thought nothing, heard nothing. Before your birth, you were, by every single definition of the word, nothing. It's kind of wild to realize you yourself were once one of the rarest things in the universe. Now, there is an interesting caveat to this philosophical argument, and it depends entirely on your personal beliefs. If you happen to believe in a realm like heaven or perhaps reincarnation, meaning you existed somewhere before birth as a soul and you'll go somewhere else after death, well, then you bypass this entirely. Under that framework, you have never, ever experienced true nothingness. Okay, let's bring it all together for our final section, why nothing cannot exist. We're going to explore the absolute scientific mic drop of why this whole concept is a physical impossibility. The ultimate reality is perfectly summed up right here. The idea of nothing exists perfectly well in our minds, but you can't taste it, hear it, or feel it because an actual physical state of nothingness is completely impossible to manifest. Just think about the literal mechanics of it. For true, pure nothing to actually exist somewhere, literally everything in all of existence would have to completely vanish just to make room for it. So even if nothing could somehow materialize, you and I would be entirely gone, wiped out of existence, and totally unable to grasp it or experience it anyway. And we know scientifically that such a crazy universe-ending vanishing act could never happen in the first place. Why? Because of the fundamental laws of physics. Matter fundamentally cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. It can only change forms. So, because matter is a permanent, unchanging fixture of our reality, true nothingness is entirely blocked from ever taking the stage. It has never existed, it will never exist, and it could never exist anywhere or at any time in our entire universe. I'll leave you with this mind-bending final thought. Since nothing cannot exist anywhere in reality, nothing itself is the absolute only example of nothing. Does your brain hurt yet? Next time you look at an empty room or gaze up into the night sky, just remember, you are looking at a universe permanently packed with something. So what hidden somethings do you think are still out there, completely invisible to us, just waiting to be discovered?